The Barrier Lake was formed after heavy rains caused some 200 million cubic meters of landslide debris to flow into the Matai'an Creek, creating a natural dam. Based on the available literature, the dam was the biggest ever formed as a result of rainfall. Today, there are still around 250 million tons of sediment on unstable slopes around Matai'an Creek. If rainfall exceeds 400 millimeters in a single day, it could trigger a landslide. If that happens, the sediment could block the river again, forming a second barrier lake. A magnitude 5 earthquake could also trigger a slope failure. The likelihood of another barrier lake forming is very high. The geology of the area around the barrier lake is naturally fractured. Last year's April 3rd earthquake in Hualien had a significant impact on the mountain. It disrupted its internal structure, and tension cracks began appearing at the summit afterwards. There were only 2 months between the Barrier Lake's formation and its collapse. The window of time to act was very short. Some suggested using controlled explosions to blast the dam, but that had its own challenges and risks. The Barrier Lake and slope held about 300 million tons of material. A blast could trigger slides and endanger downstream villages. Most of all, we simply did not have enough time to prepare. Then there are the practical difficulties. It's hard to get a helicopter up the mountain. They still can't land there now. Moreover, our data and understanding of the dam's rock joints were incomplete. To pull off that kind of detonation safely, you need military engineers. It's not our area of expertise. People have asked why spillways were not built to control the flow and prevent a sudden breach as the water level began to crest. But such engineering work requires heavy machinery, which means building an access road. At the time, we estimated it would take 3 to 4 months to build an access road. The Barrier Lake formed in late July, so even if it took 3 months, the road wouldn't be ready until October. The time frame was simply too short. Finally, as it was the rainy season, there was a chance the road might be washed away by floods. In dam break simulations, the outflow is usually assumed to be clear water and the riverbed fixed. In reality, however, the released water contains a large amount of sediment, which raises the riverbed and greatly increases the flow's destructive power, resulting in a much larger affected area than expected. Originally, we had been told that 600 to 700 people needed to be evacuated. But our analysis indicated that any dam breach would be much larger, requiring the evacuation of almost 8,000 people. At the time, we estimated that over 60 million tons of water would rush out immediately. The actual event confirmed we were correct, and we saw the downstream levees breached. According to our data, Taiwan has thousands of potential large-scale landslide zones, around 7,000 or 8,000. So many areas are prone to landslides to some extent. If there are no valuable assets below a potentially large-scale landslide zone, we won't spend money to reinforce it because there are simply too many such areas. A notable exception is Hualien, which has experienced multiple landslides, forming natural dammed lakes several times. Since it's known that this area is prone to recurring dammed lakes, funds and manpower are deployed for reinforcement whenever a landslide occurs. Matai'an Creek is a central government-managed river. The middle and lower reaches are under the Water Resource Agency, while the middle and upper reaches are under the Ministry of Agriculture's Rural Development and Soil and Water Conservation and Forestry and Nature Conservation Agency. Already, you have 2 ministries and 3 agencies trying to coordinate management of a single river. And that's before Hualien County and the Ministry of the Interior get involved. A dedicated agency will be a much better alternative to the current complex political bureaucracy. We need a national disaster management agency like the Federal Emergency Management Agency in the U.S. For Taiwan, such an agency will only need around 100 employees and a relatively modest budget. Make it responsible for advising the Premier on disaster prevention policies and overseeing the implementation of the Disaster Prevention and Protection Act. When a landslide or barrier lake occurs, it will coordinate with the relevant ministries, agriculture, interior, water resources, and guide actions such as evacuation planning. Without such an agency, our Disaster Prevention and Protection Act has no lead authority. Without a lead authority, disaster prevention can never develop into a full-fledged sector. Disaster prevention should be treated as an industry. None of Taiwan's major universities have departments dedicated to disaster prevention, meaning we're not training professionals in the field. In the civil service system, we have categories for civil engineering, water resources, and soil and water conservation, but not for disaster prevention. We simply haven't trained people for this field.